and welcome back to Animal Audit Corner, where I bring you stories about Scientology and possible other cult news. But don't worry, I'll ask you that question whether or not you want to hear other stories about cults. And don't worry, I will. Today I'm really going to fix the Xenu story because I really did mess up on it. Because when I redid it, it was really dark in the background and it just hid me from behind the scenes. So I have to do it again. And I promise this is the last time I am going to tell you that story. Scientology would adapt their own mythology of the galactic overlord known as Xenu, who headed off the Galactic Federation that ruled the universe 75 trillion years ago. With 76 planets that was in turmoil 20 million years ago. Xenu lived with certain numbers of people. These souls were called Thetans. They were frozen into popsicles to be sent to Earth, the prison planet. The Thetans were sent to Earth, to Hawaii, at a volcano and was thrown in. That caused a nuclear explosion when they threw in a hydrogen bomb. The Galactic Federation had problems with Xenu for 6 years. This would be the most stupidest thing I had ever heard L. Ron Hubbard create. This can everyone out of their money. That's what he's doing. He used it to con people out of their money. No one would ever believe a story like that, not without being committed. And guess what, people? There were no hydrogen bombs 20 million years ago. Of course, if somebody knew that in advance, they wouldn't even be going in. So that's why he kept that part a secret about Xenu and whatever strange things that character did. That mythology of Xenu has been created by Scientology fiction writer that you know as L. Ron Hubbard had created. He created Xenu in February in 1968. He came up with OT3, which is a level rank in Scientology. He came up with the crazy story of that character focusing on that mythology story since Scientology was in its existence. Well, created in February 1968, not since its existence, a little later. At the upper Scientology level, everyone would deny the story. Hubbard even wrote a screenplay about Xenu while hiding out in Nevada from each and every process server, including the FBI. None of the Scientologists know about Xenu until they get to OT3. They did reach, some of them did reach that rank. Also, do what the bottom half are not aware of that story. They'll look at somebody like they have two heads instead of one. They would do whatever it takes to avoid that material. The upper levels and also told them if they hear that story and listen to it, they will catch pneumonia and die, which is practically not true, but they're brainwashed into thinking that. Since that whole material would be implanted in their heads and think it's dangerous to get rid of, those who went all the way to OT3 in public deny Xenu's mythology. Even though that would be understandable with the idea of such knowledge is so dangerous, according to them. It's not, if it's not prepared to go over the manual. Of course, that's what OSA tells them, and they believe it. The cult has effectively came right out one day and admitted to the whole mythology for all these years. The cult had managed to pursue legal actions if anyone publishes Xenu materials that are copyrighted. Like anyone's interested in publishing a stupid story like that. The creator must have been watching Star Trek this entire time. And they're around, that story has, not Scientology, Star Trek has been around since the late 60s. So, of course, I think he's been watching too much television, tell you the truth. But in order to make such claims, Scientology has to come out and admit that such material does exist. That's the only way they can pursue legal actions. Around early 1967, he was on his way to North Africa while he came up with the character of Xenu. Of course, he didn't write it. I guess he didn't write it until 1968 because I did my research and they had two different dates, of course. But people will say different things in different stories if you notice it, because I did. While he was on Scientology's fleet, when he came out with the concept of Xenu, when he was popping pills, he was schizophrenic. It was probably prescribed by a doctor, because according to Natalie West's sister Lana, she read it in a report that she was shredding up, that also asked her to shred up, or her manager, someone did. And he was also drinking heavily, and he started to get a picture in his head. That's when he came up with that character. It was when he was under the influence of alcohol. Then he started to publicize off those materials, and no one ever questioned it. No one can't. None of the Scientologists can't. And that's how Hubbard came up with the idea of Xenu. He was intoxicated when he came up with the character. Nevertheless, Scientology adapted that mythology of the galactic overlord known as Xenu, who headed off the Galactic Federation that ruled 75 million years ago. And ultimately, the mythology of Xenu has been created by science fiction writer, of course, you know, as L. Ron Hubbard. Even though that would be understandable with the idea of such knowledge is so dangerous, according to Scientology, when it's not prepared to go over the materials. And this is when they're not at that level. Sorry, everyone. Don't worry, I'm not going to redo this story because I knocked over the microphone either. Don't worry, I won't. While he was on the Scientology fleet, when he came up with that concept of Xenu, when he was popping pills, that appears that a doctor prescribed to him. Now, Scientologist has no idea that he was taking medication for his schizophrenia, because that's what he had. Then in conclusion, at the end, Hubbard would be a dangerous person who would be a danger to the public. He was a crazy person. And that's how Scientology got their mythology of Xenu, the overgalactic warlord. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be right back shortly.